Welcome to another episode of the Residential Developer Podcast. My name's Nathan Battishall. I'm the host, and today I want to talk about value stacking. I call this value stacking, and for me, it's one of the most exciting areas of projects and developments that I've discovered, or that I've found have really worked the last couple of years. And I've tapped into some of this in a little bit of detail in previous episodes, but for me, value stacking is one way to do projects, I believe, in 2025, where we're still dealing with the market just being a little bit up and down. We're seeing, obviously, construction costs being quite high. We're seeing resales in some areas not necessarily being brilliant, but there's still money to be made. And for me, I think it's just about being creative. Things that didn't, like, not every knockdown rebuild site works. So I always say value stacking is looking at sites and opportunities where you can use creativity, where you can think outside the box, where you can stack ideas, where you can stack development ideas into sometimes little stage developments, or doing things in a creative manner. Sometimes you need to value stack when it comes to borrowing capacity or the ability to do a project. Sometimes it's about looking at, like for me, in this current market, you just can't make money on construction unless you're obviously a builder developer. But if you're someone like myself who's not a builder, you have to look at how you can use the yield of a site, how you can look at the using the site to generate more on that site, so you can lower the cost of that you're paying for the land, the dirt to put that property on, or those properties on, so that you can actually generate some wealth or some capital or some equity into a project. So for me, value stacking is a key or a creative way to be able to do projects. And there's many different ways that you can value stack when it comes to doing smaller residential investment-based developments and projects. And one common one, or one great little one, I'll use a recent case study example. Like, I've got a client in we've got a client in Kiama where found a terrific site where there's an existing property. The property's in, not the best condition, but the house is okay. It's got one street frontage at the front. It's got a street frontage at the back. So it's one of those rare sites where you got two roads. This particular site, it's about 928 square metres. It's zoned R2. You can't do multi-dwelling on it. So sometimes in some areas, those sites can be terrific where you've got two road frontages. You can obviously do multi-dwelling and things. In this particular case, you couldn't. But this particular site was excellent in the sense that there was lots of creative opportunities of things that could be done. In this particular instance, a client didn't have huge borrowing capacity, so the ability to knock down and do two dwellings was not feasible and was not possible. Now, the site was big enough to subdivide. He could have done a two-lot subdivision. So one option was to break the minimum lot size. There was 450 square metres. It's over 900 square metres, the site, about 980 from memory. So there was an opportunity to be able to do a two-lot subdivision. But the thing is, with a two-lot subdivision, that meant council. Now, that particular council can be quite slow. Even though it's only a simple two-lot subdivision, it can still be quite slow. So that was one option. So we had to value stack and look at, okay, what options are there? Now, you could do that. You could then sell the back block with no house on it, or you could sell once you do the subdivision, you could sell the front lot with the existing house on it. Both ways were profitable, but it was just looking at the options that the client had and the borrowing capacity they had, but also we looked at time contingency as well. But then we looked at another option, and that's why it's important to value stack and look at creative options of what can be done, and then you can run multiple scenarios. Some sites you can only do one option. There's only one development possible option on a site. Sometimes with these type of ones where you've got two road frontages, sometimes there can be 3, 4, 5 different scenarios, and then it's important to then look at what those scenarios are, and then you can start to look at timeframes. on those scenarios. You can run feasibilities, and then you can look at it against, obviously, your borrowing capacity. It's all well and good to do 6 dwellings, but you may not have the borrowing capacity to pull the trigger on that type of development. But then you've got to look at the time factors too. So obviously an option was to do a simple 2-lot subdivision, either sell the front house then, lower debt, have a vacant block of land to execute another house on. So that was an option. So we looked at various different things, but then we looked at an option because this was just over 900 square metre block, existing house on the front, vacant at the back with another street. We looked at the option then of doing, what if we did a detached dual occupancy? But the advantage was we looked at the contract, we looked at the 10.7, the 88B, deposited plan, all the planning elements that were needed to look at that site. We looked at and we realised we could do a full standalone house under the low-rise diversity housing code, so CDC. We're talking like roughly a 3-week approval time. Councils can take anywhere from 6 to 12 months to do the subdivision. Then you've got to execute the subdivision. So we looked at it and we realised that, you know what, we can do a detached dwelling, so a full standalone house, double story, double garage, 4-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom, hitting all the numbers that the market needs. Just building one house, and then a Torrens title subdivision, being able to break it up, being able to break that up, and then being able to then make a decision what you want to do. In this case, we looked at that option and we realised that's a viable option. There was enough borrowing capacity to do that. But then we looked at to see what was the next step or what was the next stage, and that was profitable to do that. Not hugely profitable, but it was profitable. But we looked at how can we stack this into the next project. And sometimes it's about looking at how can you execute step 1 of the process to make step 2 even more profitable. And a lot of people don't look at step 1 and step 2. They're only looking at a now project. But how can you do a now project to really make an irresistible project for the next one or for the next step or the next stage? So we looked at it and we looked at the site. We looked at the house at the front was a little bit run down. It was not in the best condition. And we said, okay, minimum lot size for a duplex CDC is 600 square metres in that particular council. So we looked at this block's over 900 square metres and we looked at, okay, the minimum lot size for a detached dual lock. So for stage 1, keep the front house, do another house at the back fronting the other street. We had to make sure that block was sitting on 300 square metres while still keeping the existing house on 600 square metres. So the idea of that being that then the plan of attack was to build the house at the back with the Torrens title subdivision, sell that brand new house. And what that did then was lower debt on the house with the land with the existing house, but keep having it as a 600 square metre lot so that then that house could be knocked down as stage 2 once the house at the back was built, subdivision was done. Sell that house at the back, the brand new house, lower debt on the existing house on the front, knock that house down. So do another CDC then for a duplex, 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, single garage, great size duplex, Torrens title, and then knocking that house down and building that duplex and having a lower debt on the site for that one, which was a terrific outcome. With the view then for this client was to then sell one side of the duplex and keep the other side with virtually no debt or very minimal, like super minimal debt then attached to that project. So that was one terrific way of being able to value stack, where just using creative ideas and options. And if you look at doing a subdivision, for example, that block was a bit over 900 square metres. You do a subdivision, essentially you're selling the existing house and then you're selling a block of land at the back. But both, you're only ever going to get a dwelling on like the existing house and then one dwelling on that 450 lot. Whereas by value stacking it, we put a brand new house on that bit of land at the back, And while that house was being built, the beauty was while the planning was being done on the house at the back, while the house at the back was being built, and again, the planning was being done in the background for the duplex at the front. So all of that was moving in the background. That house, existing house at the front, was still being rented out. It was still able to be rented out just to help with some, to cover some holding costs and various different things. But it was just a terrific way to value stack a project. And for me, value stacking is critical, I think, in this current climate. Value stacking is such a critical way of being able to look at executing a project. Sometimes you'll see the ability to break a site, for example, into a 2-lot subdivision. I remember seeing a site in Newcastle. This site was perfectly set up to be able to break it into a 2-lot subdivision, and then you could do a duplex CDC on each site. Whereas a lot of people may have just done a detached dual occupancy, and shrunk the yield. Sometimes another great way sometimes is being able to just carve off a piece, like a property. Like sometimes the key is just to lower debt, like to unencumber a site, for example. Like some of the great deals I've seen and I've been involved in with clients is where we get a large piece of land, where basically you've got a large piece of land. For example, a recent one, the last couple of years, we helped a client with. They had this really good site. They acquired this site. It had a really nice big house on it with a huge shed. It was like nice views and all that sort of thing. But then they wanted to execute a large townhouse development. You're able to fit 14 townhouses on this site. So, able to essentially acquiring this site, $2.5 million, carve off the house, sell the house for $1.8 million. All of a sudden, you've got a site with less than $1 million for 14 townhouses. That's a terrific way. And what it's doing then, you're carving it off, you're selling off that existing house. Like some people underestimate the value of keeping a property often on a site. And some people might look at that and just think they could fit another 3 townhouses on there. But, in this instance, being able to eliminate a whole lot of debt, being able to reduce that debt down was just critical. I've seen some people get lucky enough where they're able to reduce debt to the point where they can unencumber a site. Some people, what they can look to do is they might look to sell off a house. They might look to break it into a couple of lot subdivisions, sell a couple of vacant lots of land, and then keep the residual lot where they might do a townhouse development and have it and unencumber that site, have it fully debt free, so that they can maybe stage that development when they've got unencumbered land. It makes it easier, obviously, to fund the build. They might stage the build then and do it at a bite-sized pace and stage that over a couple of stages. Often you'll see that in land subdivisions as well, where people get creative in being able to execute those type of projects. But I think you can never underestimate the ability to value stack a site, to look at how can you increase value on that site, how can you increase value in your end project, in your end development, how can you look to increase value in terms of what you're doing as an end product, as an end result. And I think for a lot of people, it's working within your means of what you've got the ability to do. Like that example I gave you of that property, it came as a result of not having enough borrowing capacity to execute the project in one hit, but there was a creative way to do it so it could be done in a couple of bite-sized pieces to, one, eliminate stress, two, make the project possible and feasible, because if you can't fund it, you can't fund it. But it just meant that you could de-risk it a little bit too, and just do it at a pace that was sustainable and possible. Being able to execute that and coming out as a result with nearly a debt-free, unencumbered property that you can use then for a good base or a equity base then to move on to project 2. So there's terrific ideas and opportunities like that. Like for me, I see a lot of sites where, and I see a lot of agents, real estate agents often promoting or advertising a site where they say, if you knock this house down, you'll get 3 townhouses. And like for me, I'll often look at run feasibilities and look at feasibilities on keeping the house and doing 1 more versus knocking the house down, doing 3. Like most of the time, the numbers will stack up more for keeping the house. And they're just terrific little value stackers, because you can look at things differently to how the market look at it. You can run your numbers, and again, you're spending less on construction, and the big thing is you're lowering the debt on the property at the back. Sometimes you're getting the land for free. Sometimes you're getting the land for such a minimal price, and you're putting instant equity into the project purely based on the land, the end land product, and then being able to sell, for example, the existing house and being able to lower debt, maybe keep the new property as a long-term rental, being able to obviously claim the depreciation over that new property. And obviously, for me, I always say to a lot of people, if you can keep the new property, it's great. Like sell the older, if you're doing the simple dual lock, detached dual lock, where you're doing keeping an existing house or doing a new one. Like I always say, if your plans to hold, see if you can actually keep the newer property, because obviously claim depreciation, you've got a brand new property. So if you're holding it as a long-term hold, you can design it with that in mind. So you don't overcapitalize on the build, but you also use products and materials that you don't get the wear and tear. But you've got a new property that's, you're hoping, and provided you get the right builder, it's not going to require the high levels of maintenance that maybe an older property will get. But you're also, by selling that property, the existing property, you've got that new property with ideally a lot of equity already stacked up into it, so that you can obviously you've got an investment that is hopefully netting you a return, or at worst it's someone else is paying the mortgage off that property, and you're gaining capital growth long term through that property. But there's just so many exciting little ways that you can value stack projects and properties, and a lot of it's about being creative and running scenarios and looking at all different avenues and options. And it doesn't cost you anything to run different avenues and just being able to cross off the box of certain ways of doing projects. Like sometimes it makes sense to carve off a piece of land and sell it to lower some debt so that you can kick the stone down the road a little bit. Sometimes it makes sense to sell the existing property. Sometimes it makes sense to knock it down, to knock the whole property down. But sometimes it doesn't, and that's why I think it's important to run multiple scenarios. Don't just have it set in your mind that you're only going to do knockdowns, that you're only going to do knockdown, do 3, knockdown, do duplex, knockdown, do dual lock. Look at things with creative eyes, because at the end of the day, for a lot of people, you're doing this to generate capital, you're doing this to generate wealth, you're doing this, for all different reasons. But you want to look at things, strip the emotion out of it, and look at it through the lens of, okay, what's going to be a profitable way? What's going to be a way that's going to generate wealth and capital in this project? And then you can execute it, you can pull the trigger on it, and you can pull off a project and a development that is highly profitable and one that is enjoyable and creative. Often it's the creative projects that are the ones that you can do really well out of, because a lot of people aren't looking at it through that lens and that way. So, look, I hope this episode's been super helpful for you. I encourage anyone who's doing investments and developments to add that element of value stacking when you're looking at a small residential development site. So, look, if you enjoyed this episode, please share it around with people that you know who are passionate about projects in the development industry. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you in next week's episode.